to another edition of America's Godly Heritage. Last week we talked about Christopher Columbus and how he, the Christ bearer, because his name Christopher means Christ bearer, felt that he was chosen by God to bring the gospel to the New World. And he did actually do this. However, he also did have some major character flaws, and he made some errors in judgment that opened the door for quite a few bad things to happen in the Caribbean and Central America. When Spain came in behind Columbus and started colonizing, they did a lot of just horrible, brutal, violent things and just pillaged the land. One example of the Spanish coming in and just causing absolute destruction is when Francisco Pizzaro, you've probably heard of him. He is a famous explorer in the 1500s, and he also explored down the west coast of South America, all the way down into Peru. And he realized the area was full of gold and silver and treasure. So he went back to Spain and said, "Hey, king, can you make me governor of this land that I've just explored? And by the way, it's full of all of these riches." So of course the king said, "Yeah, go for it. Bring me back some of that wealth." And Pizarro did. He went down into what is now Peru. Natives, trying to kind of placate Pizarro, had said, "Well, there's gold and silver here, but there's this leader up in the mountains, the great Inca leader." Because in the Incan culture, the actual title of Inca is the ruler, kind of like the king, and there's only one king. So the great Inca is up in the mountains, and he's got even more gold and silver, so you should go talk to him. So Pizarro did. He went and he asked to meet with Atahualpa, who was the Incan, and in fact he had just gotten done defeating his brother for this title. So he was well indeed full of riches. He also had a lot of warriors, so he thought, no problem, I can handle these Spanish people, because there were only maybe a couple hundred of them. And there were thousands and thousands of the warriors under Atahualpa. However, they did not take into account the fact that the Spanish had cavalry and cannons and muskets and other big-time weapons that could mow down the Incan warriors. So Pizarro asked to meet with Atahualpa. It's actually a trap, because Pizzaro apparently has no honor whatsoever. So instead of actually truly meeting with the king, it's really just a setup so they can kidnap him and hold him for ransom, which they do. And Atahualpa is scared they're going to kill him, so he says, "You can ask my people to fill up a room full of gold and 2 rooms full of silver as ransom for me." Pizarro's like, "You're right, but sure," he goes ahead and tries it. And to their amazement, the people were actually able to fill these rooms with silver and gold. But Pizarro did not let Atahualpa go. Instead, he had him garroted, basically strangled. So they keep going down the coast, and they find the capital city, which is Cusco. And that place is just dripping in treasure as well, particularly silver. And they strip that place bare. Then they've heard that there's another place somewhere around here where there's even more treasure, and they look for that and they can't find it, but they keep looking and they keep looking. Well, as all of this is going on, Pizarro has one of his high-ranking officers killed because Pizarro feels that this man is becoming a threat to him and his power. This guy was very popular and had a lot of influence himself, which is probably why Pizarro felt a threat by him. So about a year later, the man who'd been killed, his friends, revenge murders Pizarro. So now Pizarro's out of the picture. But the hunt for silver continues. The hunt for treasure continues. And case study number 2, it is found in a place called Potosi, which is a mine in the mountains of Bolivia. The Andes Mountains runs along the west coast of South America, and in those mountains they find a silver mine, which is unbelievable. Normally you find deposits in mines and it's maybe that big, or if you're lucky that big. The ones in Potosi were like a yard wide, just enormous deposits of silver. So, of course, that's the end of that, and the Spanish take it over. They set up what they call the Mita system. And what it is it's basically a draft. So, everywhere, all around the mine, like for 50 or 100 miles, everywhere all around the mine, if you're between 18 and 50 and you're male and you're able-bodied, then you are drafted to go and work at the mine for a certain period of time. They'll have 12,000 workers at the mine at any given point in time. But the conditions at the mine are so bad because they don't actually care that much about the workers, so they have dangerous working conditions. There are accidents all the time. There's lung disease from the digging and all the dust being kicked up. There's mercury and lead poisoning from the mining process and the melting down of the silver. And so they're just getting sick and they're dying, and they're having accidents and they're dying. And they said worker life expectancy there was about a year. It was so bad that the place came to be known as the mountain that eats men. And if you were ever called to go to Potosi, it was basically almost like a death sentence. And your family would be lucky if they ever saw you again. And the Potosi silver mines epitomized the Spanish abuse of the Native Americans and the exploitation of the resources in South America. But the crazy thing is that mine is still running today. That's how much silver is in it. It's still running today. A third example of the abuse going on under Spanish rule is the encomienda system. So what happens is conquistadors, wealthy settlers, priests, colonial officials, basically anybody with some kind of power or position is given a big chunk of land, usually hundreds of acres, sometimes thousands of acres. These lands were just vast, and anything on that land, whether it's the crops, it's the animals because it's a ranch, if there's any kind of a mine or natural resources that they can exploit, any towns, any villages, and even the individual people themselves were all basically considered to be the property of the person who ran it, who was the encomendero. Now, what was happening was you were supposed to be getting a tribute, like once a year, of a certain amount of gold or food or crops, some kind of basically just a tax every year they had to pay. And or they could pay with their time. And sometimes they had to pay the tax and they had to pay with their time. But what was actually happening was the encomendero was basically treating them like slaves and having them work for him all the time. And everything that was produced was his. So these Spanish overlords were becoming very wealthy off of the slavery of the people working for them. They were supposed to be caring for these people and watching out for these people and trying to make life better for everybody. It's a win-win situation. The poor people get to have protection and learn about God. That was one of the big things that was supposed to be going on, is that they were supposed to be being taught about Christianity and becoming Christians. Instead, what was really happening was that was all being ignored because all the overlords were interested in was money and what they could get out of everything that was on their land. And they just treated the people there like they were things rather than people. It was just terrible. Now, the irony is that the word encomienda comes from the word encomendar, which means to entrust. So the overlords are being entrusted with the land and the people, and they're supposed to be doing their best to take care of everybody and to raise everybody up with good oversight and everything becoming better. Instead, what was going on is it was just slave labor, slave camps, and who cares if you died or you were worked to death or you were treated badly as long as you've made this guy money. So they were absolutely breaking the trust that they were given. They were entrusted. They totally broke that trust with impunity, and it was absolutely horrible. So if it was at all possible, the darkness that was in North America when Columbus first arrived had become even darker. Those who were supposed to be bringing the good news to the Native Americans, the good news of Jesus to the indigenous peoples, were instead exploiting them, brutalizing them, killing them, beating them, stealing all of their possessions. Evil was just running rampant through the Americas here. Yet, as I said, into this darkness we have the Franciscans, the Dominicans, and the Jesuits. They're going to bring a big difference here because they are going to be very, very different from what I've just been talking about. And that difference is what's going to attract the people to them and to God.
Thank you for listening to this edition of America's Godly Heritage. I hope you have a great day. Bye. If you would like to help support America's Godly Heritage or to view the resources used to make this podcast, just go to patreon.com or vimeo.com and type America's Godly Heritage in the search box. You can also make financial donations at givesendgo.com. Again, just type America's Godly Heritage in the search box. We really appreciate your support. Thanks again. Bye.